So I ordered the internet for our studio.
Okay.
And they were like, yeah, you can have gigabit Ethernet fiber. It's awesome. It's glorious. You'll love it. December 18th.
Oh, Jesus. That's ironic that we get really fast internet really slowly.
Hey, man, we said it was fast once it's connected.
Yeah, they didn't say the delivery and setup was fast.
In fact, it's so fast, the speed of the internet, that we have to slow down the connection.
It's too fast.
Right.
Yeah, they're like putting a handicap on it so that you can't go too fast with the internet.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's a company called Sonic. So you'd think, gotta go fast.
Yeah.
The weirdest part was I did the scummy Twitter thing where I like asked them to help, kind of like, oh, I wonder if they could help, la la la. And they replied and were helpful about it. But what weirded me out is that they have at Sonic. Like,
really?
How do they...
at Sonic?
How did either Sega or the fast food chain not get that?
That's a really good point. I didn't even think of the diner Sonic.
Right.
Yeah.
We went once ever, and it was because we had just had the kid and couldn't figure out how to eat. We didn't want to eat at home because we were sick of being at home, but we also were too scared to bring her into a restaurant.
That's
so
the
we were
perfect
just
compromise.
like, we'll just sit here.
I think that's a good marketing niche for Sonic is just had a kid, need to get out of the house, but can't bring your kid into a restaurant.
Traumatic new parent. Yeah. We've got the place for you.
It's the perfect niche.
Hello and welcome to the Noclip podcast. We're here for the final time in my basement sort of temporary studio. Danny O'Dwyer here, joined by Jeremy Jane.
By Scaremy Payne.
Oh, that's really good.
Deddy O'Dyer.
I'm going for Danny Boudwire.
Nice.
It's really easy.
That's better.
It utilizes the O, which I have come to realize is a unique aspect of my name.
Yeah.
Not so much back home.
Yeah,
it's pretty
I can
common.
imagine.
Yeah, O and Max are kind of everywhere. But yeah, over here it's just me and the O'Reilly Auto Parts. That's it. We're the only ones.
Yeah, you should reappropriate the O'Reilly jingle for yourself. Like that should be the intro song for our podcast.
What is it? It's
like
O'Dwyer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Yeah, expect that in next week's jingle once we're in the studio.
We'll get a fresh take on that, a clean take.
I got some studio updates.
Okay.
And I've not told you any of this, so this is
we've saved it for the pod.
Exactly.
This is hot canned material.
You saw the box on the way in.
Yes.
You came in through my garage. That is the big box. Is the cockpit for the Formula 1 24-hour extra life stream we're going to do.
Amazing.
So that's the seat that it goes in. Shout out to Next Level Racing for sending that. I was emailing, I think they're based in Australia, so really thanks for sending that. And also shout out to our good friends, everyone's the best named company in video games, Thrustmaster, for sending over, I'm not sure if you can see them, they're over there, a wheel, like a new set of wheel and pedals, and the open, I guess the F1 wheel to stick on the front of it, and then also they sent a gear stick for like trucking video games.
Oh, nice.
So we have to play some trucking video games.
Nice. Yeah, I'm super down. Yeah. I hope that chair is incredibly comfortable because you're going to be sitting in it for a very long time.
The bed sores will be real.
I'll have to flip you over every few hours.
In between Grand Prix,
exactly.
You can rub my undercarriage.
Yeah, the pit crew of another variety.
Exactly. So thankfully, all that stuff will be getting moved into the studio probably Monday. This Friday we get the keys, but the carpet's getting put in, so it's obviously we can't bring in anything.
It's very exciting.
Floor.
I just want to go stand in there.
Totally.
Just want to like stand in there in silence and just take it all in.
Just stand there naked.
Yeah.
And be like,
because I can.
I'm naked in my workplace.
Yeah.
It's a new TV show coming to ABC. Naked in your workplace.
You have to get at naked in the workplace though before Sonic grabs it up.
The other thing. So let me finish the sort of internet problem. So we don't have that stuff won't be connected up. It looks like it might not be connected up until December 18th. They have me on a early emergency, like if someone's in the area and they finished a job early, they'll come over. But the person over Twitter who was helping me was going to try and get it done like ASAP, but the fires have totally screwed them.
Oh.
Because Sonic are based in Santa Rosa.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah.
I did not realize that.
Exactly.
Oh, man.
So I messaged them today because they said they'd get back to me. I talked last week, and then Monday they said they'd get back, and they didn't. And I was like, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna ask you, I don't know what's happened or where you live or if you're even at work or anything. So today I messaged him over Twitter and was like, look, I totally get it if you folks are like busy otherwise. If there are any updates, let me know. But if there's something, if it's not something that you can do right now, I totally get it. And they responded and said like 75% of their engineers are displaced at the moment. Either I imagine they can't get to the places because the Vallejo Bridge was also like on fire.
That's
I guess
what I heard. Yeah.
It's insane.
It's wild, yeah. I had a little fire experience myself over the weekend.
Yeah, why? Because you're more north than me. You live up in Berkeley, so you're closer to all the smoke and everything.
So I went up to visit a friend in Mendocino, not Mendocino County, but the town of Mendocino.
You drove to Mendocino, so you went right through it.
So
what?
Like,
how did you get there? Did you take one?
No, I took the 101.
So you drove straight up through Santa Rosa?
I drove straight through Santa Rosa, straight through Geyserville, Healdsburg.
How close did you get?
Oh, very, very close. Danger close.
But they didn't shut the highway.
So they did at some point,
okay.
But I was up there when they did. So I actually came back yesterday instead of the day prior because the highway was closed. But on the way up there, I kind of didn't realize how bad it was.
What day did you go?
It was Friday morning.
Okay, so it was starting, but it wasn't. All eyes kind of were on down in LA where they had that fire, but the one, what's it called?
The Getty fire is the one down south, and then the Kincaid fire is the one up here.
Yeah. I think it had started up near Lake County, but it wasn't so crazy yet.
Yeah. So on Google Maps on the way up there was an icon I've never seen on Google Maps. So I got directions just to get, like, I knew the way up there, but I wanted to see the time estimate as I drove. And so there was an icon on the 101 in my direct path that was a little circle with like a flame icon in it, which I've never seen on Google Maps. And it just said Kincaid fire, and it was just like pulsing.
Right.
So driving up through like Healdsburg, because I didn't realize how bad it was going to get.
Yeah.
And I had planned to go up there all week, so I wasn't about to like check the news to see if I was going to cancel my plans.
And it's worth mentioning to people that like once you kind of go north of the like main Bay Area, there's really like two routes to where you're going. I guess you could go over the Sacramento. That would take forever.
Yeah.
And then if you drove on the coast road, it would be a complete nightmare.
Yeah. So it's basically the 101 to the 128, and you go kind of like through the mountains, which the 101 goes straight to the fire, or the one is like takes twice as long because it's a coastal highway.
And you're driving an RV.
Yes. So it was on the way up, it got so smoky that I like shut all of my windows in my car and was like, not like coughing, but just kind of, you could kind of feel it burn in your throat a little bit. And that's when I realized that it might be difficult to get back.
Right.
And so I spent the weekend up in the town of Mendocino, which had no power. And
of course it didn't have I saw on the map. I was looking at I've spent a bunch of time up in Mendocino in that town over the past couple of years. It's like a favorite spot for me and my wife.
Oh, nice.
But it is like, I saw when they had the evacuation zone or something, it went all the way to the coast, which was crazy.
Yeah.
And then Mendocino had a little fire outside of it. So they're so remote, I guess. The reason they're shutting the power lines off, for people who don't know, in California at the moment is like, it's not because power lines are down and the power's out. They're turning the power off so that fallen power lines don't start fires.
Right, exactly.
It's a proactive thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'd call it proactive because that makes it sound like a positive thing.
That's very generous of you to call it proactive.
It's a terrible infrastructure that now they're having to turn off to basically stop fires. And it sounds like both of these fires and the other one down in LA are all from power lines down.
Yeah, which is a shame. It's kind of like if you fell asleep smoking a cigarette in your armchair and burned your house down,
right.
And then you're like, I should probably quit smoking.
Yeah, I should probably not get a flame-proof armchair or something,
That's another good niche market.
Right.
But on the way back, I had to leave a day late because the fires had closed the highway. And so even yesterday on Sunday...
Yesterday was Monday.
Sorry, losing track of the days.
So what happens when you work for yourself, man?
Also, what happens when you're in a coastal town with no power for 3 days?
Oh my god, Mendocino must have been really windy as well.
It was super windy, super dark.
It's very exposed.
They were turning people away. The generator at the grocery store went out, and so we were trying to get in the grocery store, and they were like, "You're the last ones in!" and they shut the door. People behind us were literally, "Can we just come in?" And they were like, "No, like the register's not going to hold." Blah blah blah. It was like a Stephen King novel.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was like the Mist.
The
Is that
Mist.
the one that's
it was just like The Mist. Yeah. Yeah,
That's
people
a Frank Darabont movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, really?
The guy who directed that, yeah, and who did, and no, this is where it makes total sense, who also did the first season of The Walking Dead.
Oh.
So it's very like, you know,
Yeah,
it's
he's definitely got a type.
Yeah.
But so on the way back, I could see smoke, like I could see the fire from the highway. I could see like there are these hills sort of in the distance, and just behind them, I could see massive plumes of dark gray black smoke like rising into the sky. So
you couldn't see it like fire.
I couldn't see the flames.
Right.
I think it was right behind the hill, but it was close enough that I could see, you know, the residue of it.
It's crazy. We were walking around the lake on the weekend, and there was a fire. There was a small fire between Lafayette and Walnut Creek, which happened when you were away, so maybe you didn't even hear about it. But it freaked everyone out for a second because it was right. So this is like over the hill from Oakland, east, for folks who don't know the area. And it happened, like it's a very populated area. So it was a brush fire that happened off the side of a highway, which are pretty common in like LA and like California in general, I guess. But everyone's on such edge at the moment because the firefighters are spread out and like they're happening everywhere. But thankfully it got contained. But yeah, there was smoke coming over
That's crazy.
the hill, which was
like it's
freaking
happening
everyone
everywhere.
out.
Yeah, I saw a fire crew from like Riverside, from Turlock, all over the place. So it's wild.
It's crazy.
Man.
Yeah. Somehow here, I don't know what the studios. Emeryville. I think I saw Mike on Twitter saying that they had lost power. I can't remember, but we're fine here. There's a couple of neighborhoods around, like up in the hills, like Montclair was off for the past 2 days. Know some folks up there who have young kids who it's like a nightmare with that.
They gotta go to Sonic, man. It's the place for parents who need a hello.
Oh, sorry, the hamburger place.
Yeah.
I had to cycle through
all of the
Sonic possibilities.
Yeah, you're like Blue Hedgehog, fast internet.
Fast food.
Gotta go fast. They're all fast. That's the
thing.
Yeah.
Sonic.
Yeah, for sure. I didn't even put two and two together on it. It seems obvious now.
It must be like an audio company, though, who's taking the other Sonic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they're real disappointed.
But they're like Sonic with like a Q at the end.
Yeah, they're on Twitter. They're at Sonic Not Fast.
Exactly, yeah. Sonic Rich. Yeah, so that's kind of that's what's going on here at the moment, I guess, in terms of fires, internet, and race seats. But that's not why we're here this week on the podcast. We are doing the promised spooky cast. Ooh. It's a real spoop. We put the word out and asked you to send in your stories for spooky video games you played as a kid or as an adult or whatever, and we got loads and loads and loads and loads of feedback. Folks emailed us podcast@noclip.video. Thank you so much. And we also reached out over Twitter using the @noclipvideo Twitter account and got a bunch of messages from folks there. So let's dive in. I thought it'd be fun basically to sort of bounce around because a bunch of people who are listening probably have their own experiences of scary games. And we'll probably have our own little, stories about these games as well. So let's dive in to the first one. Paul in Cheshire wants to talk about Bioshock. He says, "Hello, no clipsters." I like that.
I like that
See
too.
if that sticks. This year, the year is 2007. It's actually 2000. Should we email him back and say it's 12 years off?
Send him
buddy.
a calendar.
You'll never believe who the president is. Oh, he's in England. You'll never believe who the prime minister is. It's 2007. I am 22 and Bioshock has just unlocked on Steam. I played System Shock and System Shock 2 to death in my teens. Shodan and I were old buddies at this point, so I was incredibly excited for the spiritual sequel's release and dived straight in. The intro sequence was incredibly impressive and immersive. The plane crash, the lighthouse, the bathysphere. I was sucked into the game like I had never been before. Then the splicer attack. I was shook. Being trapped in a tiny ball as it got smacked around gave me empathetic flashbacks to my childhood treatment of a pet hamster. Until to get out of the ball to run to hunt the monster down, I hesitantly do so, chasing shadows through the Nightmare of Rapture's initial Art Deco industrial area. All for 30 seconds. It's just too much. I put down the game then and there and never returned to it or any of its sequels. I never swung a wrench, never used a plasmid, never encouraged a Big Daddy or played Pipe Dream or ate an apple out of a trash can. It is the single scariest gaming experience of my life and totally ruined an entire franchise for me. Less than 5 minutes into its first installment, there is such a thing as being too immersive. Glad the podcast is back, and yes, I'm apparently a total wuss. That's a genuine scared story.
Yeah.
Because they never got over it.
Yeah, that's too effective of a storytelling intro.
Right?
Yeah, it reminds me, a friend of mine told me they went to an event where they went to a movie event, a theater, where they showed the first 5 minutes of like 3 or 4 different movies, and the audience voted on which movie to watch the rest of.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Which I thought was a really cool idea, because, you know, you're sold in the first 5 minutes on a good movie, right? This makes me think this is like backfiring.
Totally.
Like the Bioshock was like, all right, we got to hit him out the gates, and then this guy's like been hit too hard.
I think it's funny, some of the games that came up in this, I feel like they have their scariest moment like a little bit into them, but a lot of games do have their sort of scariest moment at the start, because I guess it's kind of, no, I guess horror movies aren't like that. It kind of ramps up, but like a lot of games you don't really understand the rules, or you don't have a crutch of knowledge, or actually just the crutch of having a really good gun or something, or skill that makes you feel like, oh, you know, whatever they throw at me, I'll be able to get back at. Did you play Bioshock? Have you played?
I played a ton of Bioshock. Yeah, I did not play Bioshock 2. I played a lot of Bioshock and Bioshock Infinite.
Yes.
In fact, ranting about Bioshock Infinite is how I got my job at GameSpot.
You hated it, did you?
No, I loved it.
You loved it.
I loved it.
I really like it a lot.
I went on a tirade about nonlinear narrative, and our old boss Ty was like, "This guy seems like a good fit."
Yeah, I'm sure that was the first conversation Ty had about nonlinear narrative. I love Ty to bits. He was my boss too, but he wasn't. He was probably more interested in like, yo, those guns are real good.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I love Bioshock, man. I think that it's interesting how much of a horror atmosphere it has for a game that I don't think of that in the way I think about Resident Evil or things like that.
Yeah.
But it really is like a very scary sort of haunting world, and it's sort of that like psychological weight you feel of there's just like madness, and the discovery route you go down is kind of just like figuring out why everything is so destroyed in this utopian dystopia. It's really cool. I never thought about Bioshock as a horror game, but this is making me reconsider it.
Yeah, a lot of the games that came through were sort of in this interesting situation where some of the games are horror games, right? Silent Hill and Fatal Frame and Resi and stuff like that. But then there are some games that are just like, they have horror elements, or they're just scary. Like I talked last week about my brother having problems with Half-Life and the head crabs, right? Like that's no one is standing here saying Half-Life is a horror game, you know what I mean, or and meant to be scary, but it's definitely like has those moments. And System Shock to me is similar, where System Shock is a game that I forget is scary until I'm playing System Shock, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is like foreboding and you know. It's like there's a point where difficulty and fear kind of meet, because I was thinking about System Shock and I was thinking about like the difficult first person game, and weirdly enough another game that came into mind was Kingpin Life of Crime. Have you ever played that?
Never played it. Never even heard of it.
This is, oh god, it was, what was it, Zatrix I think the company was called. Cypress Hill did a bunch of music for it.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so if you put the game disc in a CD player, you got like 3 like songs and like a bunch of interludes.
Hits from the bong just starts playing in the opening crawl.
Yeah, it's like checkmate fool. It's like really good. I love it.
That sounds so cool.
And they'd be playing on like stereos in the world and stuff. But it was a game that like really intimidated me, because you could, unlike, you know, first person games du jour back then, you could die really easily, like in one encounter. There was a lot of melee. It was all like Street Thugs and stuff like that, and this like seedy sort of like, I don't even know when it was set. It was like a futurist 60s or 50s. It was really weird, but it was very contemporary. But that game was like scary to me, but it wasn't because it was like a horror thing. It was just difficult, and the tone the area was in was just kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
So it's funny how different games are...
scary games are some of the scariest games. I was thinking this morning, writing down some scary games, and one that sort of a non-traditional one was, remember Shadows of the Empire, the Star Wars game? It was like a third-person kind of like action adventure. It was I played it on the N64. There was a level where you were swimming through this like brown water, like tunnels of brown water, and there were these big tentacle monsters. I can't remember. I had a book about all the Star Wars creatures. They're like... I want to say Diagon, but that's like Diagon Alley in Harry Potter. But it's something with a D, and they are just these like big tentacle monsters. And the fidelity of the visuals is so low that you just can't see them until they're upon you.
Oh right.
And so you're just totally blind because it's like this old janky game.
It's like Silent Hill.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the fog. Draw distance is the scariest thing in video games.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
We'll get to Silent Hill. It comes up later on. But yeah, it's funny how I guess like the intro to that game is very scary in a way that like I feel like if they got over the hump of it, they'd probably be able to play the rest of the game, unless maybe the vibe itself was part of it. But I remember that whole intro for me, I was just shocked that the Irish accent was really good. That Atlas's Irish accent is spot on. And what was interesting to me is I won't get into Bioshock spoilers, but he also voiced another person in that game who has a very strong American accent. And I thought, oh, is that somebody that's like an Irish person putting on a really good American accent or something? But I can't tell if an American accent is good necessarily because I'm not American. And I looked it up and they're actually an American. But the Irish accent is for Atlas is spot on.
That's very impressive.
It's like Splicers changed everything at the start and I was like, ooh, a good Irish accent in the game.
Sold immediately.
Totally. Colby in Seattle sends in a message about a game that I don't think I'd heard of this. Hi, Danny and Jeremy. The game I recommend... The game I remember the most is a game called Rescue on Fractalis. Have you ever heard of this?
Never heard of it.
My mom would play it on our Commodore 128 in the dining room. Why it was in the dining room, I don't know. And she or my older brother would get to this part where you would attempt to land on the titular Fractalis, and an alien would pop up and attack you. It would scare the shit out of me. It was developed by Lucasfilm Games back in 1984.
Oh, wow.
I think they were playing it around 1988-ish. My scary game growing up was Alone in the Dark. It came out on 1992 PC. Between the tanky movements and jump scares, I was always on the edge of my seat as a 12-year-old. As an adult, Eternal Darkness on the GameCube did it for me. Between having a little too much to smoke, incredibly vocal friends, and well, the game's screwing with you, it was a recipe for disaster. Huge fan since, well, I don't know, but it's been a while. Love the podcast. Thanks so much, Colby. Do you have any experience with those? I have experience with one of those.
I'm aware of Alone in the Dark and Eternal Darkness. I've not played any of the games on this.
I'd never played Eternal Darkness. I had a friend who played it on GameCube, and I watched a bunch. That's a Silicon Knights game. That's a Dennis Dyack thing. I think that's like the best sort of game I think the most notable game they put together that wasn't a Metal Gear Solid one. Anyone I know who's played that has, talks. There's so many. There's like 7 or so, or maybe a bit more classic GameCube only non-Nintendo games that were like really Capcom put out a bunch of really good stuff, and I played most of those when I got one, but I never did play Eternal Darkness. I should go back and do that. Alone in the Dark I played a bunch of, and that was really scary.
What's Alone in the Dark?
I feel like if you were to put it on a path of a genre, it's kind of the like progenitor Resident Evil, where it's like a lot of like fixed camera stuff, tanky controls, and character action stuff, like exploration puzzle stuff, and also like things attacking you. Played on PC. I think in my head I played it on PS1. I'm not really sure if that's the case. And Rescue on Fractalis. I love when you hear about these games, especially when Lucasfilm Games back then were pumping out stuff as well.
Yeah, totally.
It's funny how these old games, like you mentioned the what was the one you said?
Shadows of the Empire?
Yeah, we're like the lack of clarity is what kind of gave it made it a little more scary.
We'll talk our own scary games, but I have another one that fits into that jankiness as horror trope.
What is it? Go for it.
So interesting piece of history too. So I was looking into games that I played as a kid that I really enjoyed, and I realized that the same developer made Body Harvest and Space Station Silicon Valley.
I don't think I've played either of those.
So they were both N64 games that I absolutely loved as a kid, and both of them were made by DMA Design.
Oh my god,
who became Rockstar North.
Yeah,
exactly. So the interesting thing about these games is that in both Body Harvest and Space Station Silicon Valley, you are a very weak sort of like little character who can get into, in Space Station Silicon Valley, you get into these robot animals, and that each one has like different powers, and so you're kind of like fighting, you like kill a dog, and then you're like a little microchip guy who hops in the robot dog and controls it. And then in Body Harvest, you're like a weak little dude with a pistol who gets in these like tanks and cars and all these vehicles, and so they're both directly sort of GTA, like pre-GTA.
Of course,
because you're like walking around as like a weak little dude getting into vehicles for like obviously you're stronger on foot in GTA, but it's weird. So I never realized that DMA Design was Rockstar North. But Body Harvest was this.
They did Lemmings as well.
Oh yeah! Oh my god!
I know, it's weird.
That one doesn't really fit the trope of like little dudes getting in things. But Body Harvest was this game where it was like this big open world where like aliens aliens were coming to like cull the human race for, I can't remember why, like
Right.
to harvest their bodies. I don't know why.
Turn us into batteries, man.
Yeah,
You
something
know?
like that.
Yeah.
Some Matrixy kind of MacGuffin. But yeah, it was just this really scary open world game, and it was very minimal, and there was just kind of like the ambient tones of the soundtrack, and it was just like it was a game that gave you no direction on where to go. It was totally nonlinear, and so it was just kind of like, I don't know. I just remember being terrified by the world of Body Harvest.
Body Harvest.
Also, that name is,
Yeah, that's a very
Cronenbergian.
evocative name. I was trying to see, there's one of the games that came up on this list. One game that came up a lot, actually, is Fatal Frame.
I was gonna make. I've never played Fatal Frame, but I was gonna make a joke that it's scary because it reminds me of work.
Jesus. Oh, did your sister also turn into a ghost or whatever it was?
That's why.
Yeah. This one comes in from our good friend Shell Comics, Ryan. One of the scariest games I played as a kid was this game called Fatal Frame. It's the old Japanese game about a girl trying to investigate her sister's death, I think. Anyway, every night that your character dreams, you go through this haunted house with ghosts, and the only weapon you have is your camera, and you have to look through the viewfinder and wait for these ridiculously scary looking ghosts to come out and then snap a picture. The flash scares them. Wasn't a great game in the end, but oh boy, did it scare the bejesus out of me. We actually had a lot of people talking about how much they loved Fatal Frame.
Yeah.
So
I like the idea that you are like that a camera is your weapon, because like you were saying, the beginning of a game can be unintentionally horrific, like Bioshock, because you're underarmed, you don't know the rules of the world yet, you don't have any cool guns, you don't have a BFG to like shoot the ghosts. And
Totally.
So the idea that there's a whole game where you're just like taking pictures of ghosts to stay alive really appeals to me.
And this also is basically the hook on Outlast.
Oh yeah.
Like those games are, it's different in a way. I feel like Fatal Frame, again, I've never played it, but I've watched a bunch of people. But I think Jess McDonald did it on an Extra Life GameSpot
I think
stream
so too.
or something like that. Or herself and Zareen maybe did they did a scary show. I think I watched it through that. Where Outlast obviously has a lot more melee sort of fighting back, mechanics in it, but it's a similar kind of thing of having that, like, the camera as it's weird because the camera can also be like, it can feel like a bit of distance between yourself and reality, like just watching through that. You see a lot in like horror movies of use like cell phone cameras in loads of different ways as a sort of a storytelling mechanic. But Outlast scared the bejesus out of me.
I've not played Outlast. I've seen a bunch of gameplay from that and Fatal Frame, but I haven't played either myself.
Yeah, there's that, and then actually I won't get into any more because I want to get to some of the spooky shorts, as I've called them. These are the people who sent in via Twitter at Noclip Video on Twitter if you want to follow us. We don't actually post all that much except when we put up docs and when we're asking people to send in their spooky recommendations. First one that comes in is from a friend of the show, Mary Kish, who says, amnesia distorting your visuals and adding teeth grinding noises when you see a monster is unbelievably frightening, and the invisible water monster is unforgettable. Those guys, have you played any of those games?
No, I had a friend who was really into them though.
I've played a bunch of them, and this is my Bioshock.
Oh, really?
I have never completed like past maybe level 2 in any of them.
Just because it was too terrifying?
They are really, really scary.
Yeah, they seem it.
They're foreboding in the same way that probably the scariest game I ever played a lot of is very similar to Amnesia and kind of Outlast, in that it's one of those games where you're not armed to the teeth, is Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever played that?
No, I was just reading about it because I've been on a Lovecraft tear, but
yeah, totally. Yeah, everyone's favorite. Nothing scarier than H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name. So he's the...
Look it up, people.
Yeah, because we're not saying it here.
No.
Man, that guy was a piece of shit.
That guy was a real racist.
Right?
That's why H.P. Lovecraft is interesting, though. He was terrified of the world, of the unknown. So he had this sense of, like, that there was, like, this greater force out there, in the same way that, like, maybe, like, a Buddhist would sense, like, interconnection or something.
But he was...
But he was terrified of it. And he was also like, he was terrified of other people, terrified of anyone who wasn't just like a white European person.
Right.
So like,
and he was kind of scared of those too.
Yeah.
I thought maybe they're fish people.
Yeah, I think he was just scared of. Also, fun fact, the town that Innsmouth, the town in The Shadow over Innsmouth, the famous H.P. Lovecraft story.
Which is what Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth is set in.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Innsmouth is based on Newburyport, Massachusetts, which is where I grew up.
Whoa!
I grew up the next town over.
Are you a fish person?
I can't say.
Is that what you're telling me?
It's like when you're a cop, you don't have to ask like if you're a cop, I don't have to answer truthfully.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth, you play as one of these inbred. Oh no, sorry. You play as a detective going into this city of sort of inbred fish people, but you don't realize that's what they are at the start.
Hey, you watch your mouth about those fish people.
Those are my fish.
Those are my fish people. All right.
And I of course was playing this at age, oh god, I don't know, like maybe 14 or something. I'd never heard of Cthulhu. I probably pronounced it Cthulhu or something at the time. It's like when I was reading it like a menu of any foreign country, I couldn't pronounce anything. It was like, it felt, I pronounced genre Janier for years until
sounds like a lovely French woman's name.
Janier until it wasn't until I heard somebody actually say it, and I was so embarrassed when that happened. It's a really fun game. It's really scary, and I think going into it as a first-person game, thinking, "Oh, it's a first-person game, I'll be able to hit stuff." It actually plays out more like a first-person kind of adventure game, but there is a physicality aspect to it, and there's a mechanic in it that's basically like fear, like a fear anxiety reaction that your main character has, and it sort of manifests kind of like drunk mode in video games, where you kind of get tunnel vision and it gets warpy and it moves around a lot and it's difficult to move. And what's amazing is that there are these sequences where you're either, in quiet, doing stealth bits where you're trying to creep around, and it happens a bit then. But there are like chase sequences that happen where the town are coming after you.
Oh God.
And you have to run indoors and like push bookcases in front of the door to like stop them, and then jump out a window. And then your character's also scared of heights, and you're like walking along rooftops and like along planks, and if you look down he gets more freaked out. That's
really cool.
It's very effective.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
That reminds me a little bit of did you ever play The Thing video game?
I never did. I've
never seen The Thing?
I'm such a bad Cronenberg fan.
So we're having movie night as soon as possible.
I've
we're watching
never seen The Thing.
It is truly one of the most terrifying movies ever. Not least because it is just like all of the effects are practical. It's just like it just looks disgusting, and it looks so real and gross. But in The Thing video game, there was the conceit of The Thing, for people who aren't aware, is that there is like an alien entity that can infiltrate.
I don't know anything about The Thing, so you're kind of spoiling the movie if you go any further.
No, this is the setup for the movie. Okay. This is like the log line for the movie.
Okay.
It's like a thing that like anyone could be infected and like be the thing, but they don't present as such.
Okay.
And so it's like this whole paranoid horror fantasy. That's not spoilers. That's the setup for the movie.
As opposed to The Fly, when it's The Fly.
It's The Fly. Goldblum is messed up. But the interesting thing about the Thing video game is is that there is a trust and fear mechanic, and so you have like AI. You find AI compatriots as you go around this like Arctic research base, and you don't know who's infected, and they don't know if you're infected.
Oh wow!
And so your leadership, it's pretty rudimentary. Like I'm sure if I went back and revisited it, it's not that complex. But you can like send guys out and be like, go attack over there, kind of like freedom fighters. Like it's very simple, like point and click commands. But like if you send them into a dangerous situation, they'll be like, how do I know you're not one of those things, man?
That's amazing.
And there's like a meter where it's like they'll stop trusting you, and then if all your dudes get into the red, they'll be like, you're one of those things, aren't you, man? And then like they'll kill you, and you have to like either run or fight them, or like and then you'll be like hunted by people on the base. It's super badass.
We should do like probably on the second channel, we should do like a roundup of some of our favorite games that are based on like movies that came out 20 years earlier.
Oh yeah.
Because like the Warriors.
Oh yeah, I loved that game.
The Ghostbusters game that came out. I guess that was technically, I think, a sequel to Ghostbusters 2, but the one that came out on Xbox 360, I think it was.
Never played that.
Yeah, I think Aykroyd wrote it or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. People were involved. All the voice actors.
Ghostbusters and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Right. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It's such a weird subgenre of like who decided to make The Thing? It's PlayStation 2 or something, was it?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, I played it on PS2.
Yeah, so weird.
It was like an odd time to make that game.
And then like what an interesting way of doing it. To add that mechanic in instead of it just being a horror.
Totally.
Dungeon crawler,
corridor
like
little
crawler.
Mechanics like that can add such an interesting, like the like addiction or dependence in like Fallout to stims and things like that.
Yes.
Or like I like it's interesting how just adding like a little mechanism like that can really make the world feel a lot more fleshed out and realistic.
Yeah, that's incredible. One of the messages, or a lot of the messages we got, were from specific levels in games, which does come up a lot. This one from SMG Studio: Half-Life 2, but only the scenes where you were running around the roof with the buzzsaws. I have to turn the lights and headphones off, or on, sorry. I had to turn on the lights and headphones when I played that. Yeah, I think they're referring to the Ravenholm. Yeah, that whole section.
That is really scary.
It is, and it feels like a horror game stuffed into Half-Life.
Yeah.
A horror level. It was a really good palate cleanser.
Yeah,
I think
it did feel like it was sort of a departure from the rest of the game. Feels sort of so like subdued and sort of like clinical, sterile dystopia. Like you're in this Big Brother world where everything has been reduced to controllable, and then all of a sudden you're just in this town full of zombies who are shooting buzzsaws at them.
And it's when you think about what you were doing for the preceding couple of hours was like, I mean, Half-Life 2 in terms of like level design, but also in terms of like level pacing is just like a world of its own. You start off in the game and it's like, it's like a protracted narrative introduction the whole way until the whole way until after you meet them, and you're like, after you meet Alex and everything, like that whole section. And then you're like in a normal FPS for a while, running around the city, and then you have this massive like boat section that happens, right?
Yeah.
That's just like, you're just kind of wandering around the canals, and you can stop in places or just keep going, and it feels so open.
Strange. Like it kind of keeps changing on you. Yeah. I mean, that's an aspect of good storytelling, is that like at the end of a story unit or like an act or whatever, like a sequence, the story should sort of like, something should happen that sends the story in a new direction. I feel like Half-Life 2 does that, but for gameplay mechanics.
Yeah.
I mean, for story as well in many ways, but like they're like, oh yeah, you think this is a shooter? What if you drove for 2 hours, fool? And you're like, oh, okay. What if you could control aliens with a weird gun that shoots pods?
Totally, yeah. It's I also think they bring the physics stuff front and center in the Ravenholm levels. Like I wonder when they were designing it, was it like one of the the blockout levels that they had for testing it? Because like you can kind of not use the physics as weapons in the boat stuff. You're mostly just using the guns, but they introduced the physics in terms of puzzles in that section a lot, with like lifting bridges and getting caches and all that sort of stuff. But in Ravenholm, they're kind of like, look, you're in these like really tight corridors. You probably don't want to be using their like grenade launcher on this gun, and there's going to be lots of things attacking you. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you this gravity gun the level beforehand, and then we're just going to like have buzzsaws stuck into walls and like paint cans and like just stuff everywhere. Like, do what you want to do. It's like so obvious that you're
grimmest version of Home Alone ever.
Totally.
Hitting Joe Pesci with a paint can.
Right.
Yeah.
And then like, like I said, my brother was scared of Half-Life 1's head grabs, but then they introduce 2 different types of head grabs in that level. I think they introduced both of them. They introduced the fast head grabs and the poisonous head grabs.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and the fast ones are scary because they do the one thing that the other head grabs don't do, which is they move fast, they don't care. The other head grabs set you up and then they jump.
Yeah.
These ones just like go for you. And then the poisonous ones were scary because they knocked your health down, I think, to 1 with 1 shot.
Oh yeah.
And then your health would go back up again. But they made like a little ticking, clicky noise before they jumped, and you'd sometimes hear them, and like they became the most scary aspect of it. And then you got introduced to the head crab zombies, the fast head crab zombies, which are the ones that were able to like walk up pipes and stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of using audio to telegraph an attack of an enemy in a first-person game is super effective, because you're like, oh god, where's it coming from? Like as soon as your brain associates that noise with that enemy, then it's like you can only be looking in one direction, and so all of a sudden you're just like waiting to hear the sound.
And they do that in loads of ways in Ravenholm. For instance, when you're on top, there's at one point you're waiting for Father Gregory to send over the like little elevator gondola thing, and you're on top of a roof, and the head crab zombies are crawling up the water pipes, but there's a water pipe in front of you and to the left and to the right, and when they crawl up, the water pipe bangs against the wall. It goes like dunk, 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 and then you hear another one going dunk, 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 and then the third one is a dunk, 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 and you can hear which one's coming first. But also, like, just the sound of 3 of them coming is like so.
Yeah, the audio design in Half-Life 2 is really good. I'm recognizing that now in a way that I guess I've always known.
Yeah,
I've never really like had a conversation about the audio of Half-Life 2.
Yeah, I mean, every single part of that game, the HEV sounds, like it's just Masterclass. Love that game.
Warms my heart.
Somebody should make a 2-hour long documentary about how cool that game is. Derek Liu sent in a question or an answer we got from lots of people. PT, because of its relentless escalating tension. How is your experience with PT?
It came out when we were both working at GameSpot.
Yes.
And then there was sort of a rotating cascade of people going into the lobby set with all the lights off so that they could all experience it together.
Yeah.
Which then devolved into a group of people constantly sitting on the couch trying to figure out how to get through this thing.
Yeah. I remember Eric Tay being
leading the
sort of
charge.
point person on that one.
Totally, yeah.
It was such a weird time because it came out... People weren't really sure what it was because by then people didn't know that it was a Silent Hills like commercial basically.
Oh, yeah,
the game that never came out.
Yeah.
And also the internet was like trying to figure out like how to get it to appear and do all that sort of stuff. I played it when everyone was playing it. I think I was editing something and then I played it like 3 or 4 days later. And yeah, it's scared the bejesus out. I still have it on my PlayStation because they obviously took it off PSN. So
we should play it sometime.
I have it backed up. Yeah, totally.
I love that game.
It's on my original PlayStation back there.
Nice.
Recently, I forget the gentleman's name, but somebody on Twitter has been basically hacking apart PS4 games. They've done some stuff on Bloodborne as well. But one of the things they did in PT was like basically figure out a bunch of like the weird code that was going on. And the scariest part that I've seen so far is that the ghost of that woman, if you like remove the camera from the character, she's literally behind you the entire time.
Oh no.
So yeah, when you'd see all those like weird shadows and stuff when lights would happen and you'd like look behind you, she's like a backpack.
Oh my god.
Like her face is like right on your neck. Yeah.
That's like when that's like if you built a house and you like wrote on one of the I-beams behind the wall, like murder, murder, murder. Right. Like even if you don't know it's there, it's just like you could feel it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
That game is often talked about as, I think, one of the most scariest because of it's that escalating tension. And then when something does scare, it's like that exact feeling they mentioned where you're like, oh, well, at least I know another scare is not going to come right now.
Yeah, you get a little bit of catharsis.
Yeah. But it feels like a jump scare simulator where you're the camera, but you don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I was thinking, we can get back to Resident Evil because I want to talk a little bit about the Resident Evil remake at some point, but I was thinking how the intentionality of the set camera, that fixed camera, creates like such a cinematic experience, and much in the same way that like having low fidelity visuals, like janky sort of graphics, can set you up for scares. The intentionality of these fixed cameras sets you up because you don't know what's around that corner.
Totally.
And it creates this very sort of like curated experience where you're like watching a movie. Like you don't get to choose when the cut happens.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that PT almost preserves that feel without having the fixed camera or something. Like you said, you're the cameraman, and so in a sense, like the fixed camera is just wherever you're looking. But then the sort of the world has like curated scares and like coordinated things, but it unfolds in a similar way where you feel like you're like walking into a trap.
Totally.
Yeah.
You feel the intentionality is on the game's side, that you're like, oh, you're reacting to where I'm putting the camera, whereas in Resident Evil or something, that weird intentionality is the camera itself, and you're reading into it being like, oh, should I be worried about what's out of frame here?
Yeah.
Like you're not sure. And like Resi does a bunch of that with like either having like a very flat angle going down a long corridor, and then like there's like halfway down there's like a little turn to the right, or you can keep going down, and when you walk past you hear like the and like a hand comes out and you're like, ah.
The scariest thing, I'm just gonna get to this now, the scariest thing in Resident Evil remake is Lisa Trevor, which is I don't know how much you played the remake. I think this was like a totally optional thing.
This is gonna sound like such an annoying question.
Yeah.
Which remake?
The GameCube one.
Okay, I didn't play it.
So in the Resident Evil remake, there was a character named Lisa Trevor who was experimented on with the Tyrant.
It's like Steve Dave.
Yeah, Steve Dave. Lisa Trevor. Yeah, fake name. So she was like experimented on with the Tyrant virus, the Tyrant being the like super T-virus zombie that appeared in Resident Evil 4. And so she was like this deformed little girl who they experimented on.
Right.
And they, I can't remember.
Tyrant was at the end of Resident Evil 1 as well, right?
Oh, was it? It's been so
so.
long since I played that game. I just remember
Nemesis is 3.
Nemesis is 3. Yeah. But Lisa Trevor, I guess they took her from her parents to experiment on her, and then the story is
Well, that's good. She should, because they named her Lisa Trevor. Like,
that's child abuse. But they sent in Umbrella Corp sent in like people pretending to be her parents after they're experimenting on her because she's like a little girl, and they're like, oh, we'll just trick her and like make her comfortable because she was like freaking out. And super strong like tyrant virus Lisa Trevor saw through the guys and killed them, and like ripped the skin off their faces and wore it. And you could like find her in this basement in Resident Evil, like under the mansion, and she was just like chained up and super strong. I think she killed you in one hit as well. Yeah, everyone out there, Google Lisa Trevor and just like read the wiki and be horrified.
Oh my god.
Yeah, super super scary. And she has that chain sort of like brick on her hands.
And those are her parents' faces on her. And is she also a licker? She's got lots of tongues in this thing.
Yeah, I don't remember that part. She might have appeared. She appeared in like other sort of Resident Evil like offshoots and stuff.
Oh my god!
But the one I remember is the remake. She was just like chilling in the basement.
That's a nightmare. Have you played Resident Evil 7? That came up a lot.
I was looking. I was trying to jog my memory and looking up lists of scariest games, and that was at the top of a lot of them, which makes me think I got to go back.
Yeah, and it's virtual reality as well. So I'm not sure how much that play. We talked a bit last week about Alien Isolation and doing the VR stuff and how that has a big impact. So, but yeah, people keep saying it's just like such a unique like how did this game get made? But I'm delighted it got made.
Yeah.
And how is this a good Resident Evil game? I'm really interested to play that. I also feel the same way. This is not horror, but have you been watching the Watchmen series?
No, I need to. I heard it was super good.
It's good.
Yeah.
2 episodes in and it's really good. The directing, the editing is so smart. It has the soundtrack is done by Atticus Ross and what's his face? Trent Reznor.
Oh, really?
So it sounds like an Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor. Is it Ross or Rose? It's Ross, isn't it? Atticus Ross.
I don't know. Yeah. I know Trent Reznor.
Yeah. They've done all the Social Network. They're the duo who did like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, all those ones. Yeah.
I have not. I want to read the Watchmen before I watch
have you
the
never...
series. I've never read it. I tried to watch the feature film version of it, and it was structured like a graphic novel, which does not work for a movie for me.
Right.
And so I got an hour in, and I was like, I just couldn't do it. I know a lot of people have a lot of love for that movie. I just really didn't.
People are very hot and cold on that movie.
Yeah, it was. I think a good movie is polarizing. Yeah. Like I'd rather hate a movie than just kind of feel nothing about it.
I think Zack Snyder is a better director than writer.
Yeah.
And I think given the story, I think they trimmed out. They do a good job of. There's a subplot in the Watchmen comic graphic novel. I have a copy here. I'll give it to you.
Cool.
Which they basically remove, but it changes the ending.
Oh.
And the ending in the movie actually, I think, works in a way not better, but like better for a movie than the ending in the book would have worked. And it wouldn't have made any sense in the movie, or would have been like such a weird way of doing it. So
I want to read it so that I can appreciate the movie.
It has maybe the most cringe-inducing scene in a film I've seen in a while.
Oh God!
It was like a sex scene that's in slow motion where Alleluia is playing.
Oh God!
Yeah, it's like really bad. But apart from that, I think it's actually a well put together
parody.
Yeah, some of the actors are wonderful in it. Yeah, well. Great cast.
I wanted to like it. I just was feeling like this movie's like all over the place.
Right. All right, sorry, let's jump back into the games. I'm going to go through a couple of these and you can pick out one that you want to talk about.
Okay.
First one is from Spookiest Fan Tom. So I think this is Tom. This is what happens when you ask for questions over Twitter, by the way. Everyone's got their Halloween names on. Dead Space, the way it relentlessly hits you with terror and atmosphere. It's proper cosmic horror. You feel like you can never truly win. Corliss sent one in saying, there's something about Doom 3 that pushes my buttons. The constant threat of an obnoxious jump scare, but coupled with a truly nerve-wracking sound design and great lighting, or lack thereof, even replaying it 15 years later, still unsettles me. And the last one here is from Mood that says, my scariest game I ever played was the first Silent Hill. As solar eclipse happened for real in my area in 1999, there was a solar eclipse throughout Europe. I remember that actually. So the experience got real to some extent. Couldn't continue the game for a week. Any of those stand out to you?
I have played a little bit of Dead Space, but not a ton. I've not played Doom 3, and Silent Hill was one of those games that my friend had as a kid. I never had a PS1, so it was one of those games that like where you just get little tastes of it, but it kind of seems more mysterious for that. Which of those is the one that resonates with you the most?
Silent Hill, I also I feel like the generation of kids now play a lot of games vicariously through Twitch in a way that we were sort of like over the shoulder players, where like a friend was playing a game and we were over in their house a lot.
Yeah.
So I played a bunch of Silent Hill. Well, I didn't, but I watched it. I played it years later again myself, but I saw most of it while I was watching someone else. And I think me and my buddy Dale, I remember we used to watch horror movies as well, and whenever we did that, we'd actually go to our own houses because we felt like when we were in the room together, we weren't as scared.
Yeah.
So I remember when like Ringu came on for the first time, I'd never seen a Japanese horror movie in my life, and it scared the bejesus out of me. We watched it separately because we thought it would be more scary. So in that way, Silent Hill never scared me properly in the way that I think the design of like Pyramid Head and that sort of stuff was very, especially for a young person, was quite like upsetting in the way that I bet Bloodborne would be or is as well, where like just the design of stuff is so otherworldly. Dead Space, I completed all 3 games, and those games are terrifying for the reason that they said, I think, which is that you never feel like you never get that moment where you've got like the hyperspace arsenal where you're able to destroy everything, like you do in like the new Doom, for instance, which isn't scary at all.
Right.
The demons are scared of you in that game, and it's a power fantasy, but it totally works. Dead Space feels like you're constantly on the back foot. Like the rationing of ammunition is a big part of it, and just like the constant dread in that world means you're wanting to get out of places a lot.
Does Dead Space do one of the things that I really like about original Resident Evil is the safe rooms feel like this sort of like little tiny island. Like even the music is very soothing in them. Does Dead Space do like a reprieve like that, or is it pretty much just like, because I know you're on a spaceship with a bunch of deadly aliens? Yeah,
it does have areas where you save like that, but they can be peppered in dangerous areas too. I think what it does is it has areas that are It handles pacing well, where there are areas that feel safer than others. Like you know, in like the horror, you like get the power turned on and the lights come on and you're like, okay, now I can see. Or it's a big room, so it feels like, oh, I know nothing's going to come at me from like nowhere here. But Dead Space does a lot of like messing with your expectations in that regard, where like there are levels that are really bright and really scary because they do it in certain ways, or they change up the mechanics in certain ways. There's parts where you're like kind of like Doom 3 actually, where you're outside in the atmosphere of space, so it does a lot of audio messery where you suddenly can't hear where anything's coming for you.
Oh wow.
Because you're just like in your head, like in your like spacesuit. Doom has a bit in that in Doom 3 in the first opening levels, but you don't actually, kind of like that first level in Alien vs Predator I was talking about last week, you don't actually meet anyone in that. But and Doom 3 is, I think, scary mostly because of the jump scares. Those imps come out of nowhere and they just like throw a fireball at you. And
my experience of Doom 3 was reading about it in magazines and being sad that I didn't have a PC that was good enough to play it.
It was a real graphics card hog. That was a good year. 2004, I want to say. It was the same year Half-Life 2 came out, and World of Warcraft.
Damn.
Yeah.
A golden age.
Totally. Lighting in that game was great. That game gets a bad rep. I think it's in a way that Doom 1 and 2 aren't horror games, but they're scary. Doom 3 is a horror game.
I remember
like they went to make a horror game.
The original Doom, I remember playing on a friend's dad's PC after his dad would go to bed, and like being really scared because it was this sense of sort of like it was forbidden, and it was also like, I think we played like Wolfenstein 3D too, which is not a scary game, but it was like oh god, like we're not supposed to be doing this, and then it was like the sense of like getting caught kind of fed into the experience of playing the game or something.
I love it. Yeah, it's like watching a scary movie at nighttime when your parents are asleep. You know you're not supposed to be doing it.
Yeah, totally. Like the jump scare was your dad coming down the stairs.
What are you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I've never seen The Thing, because my dad. No, it's not why.
He shut it down.
Yeah, I know.
He saw the first 5 minutes and he
Cronenberg,
was like,
not in my house.
No body horror in this house.
You watch Scream like a good boy. Have you any experience with let's dive a little bit more, let's say, into we got a couple of more of the sort of traditional horror game, and then we'll sort of talk about games that are scary but not really horror games so much. A couple more first-person shooters to round it out. Chris says the first Condemned game, the atmosphere, the jump scares, and especially the sound design made this game creepy as hell. The mannequin sequence in the old mall still freaks me out. And the Texas James Saw Massacre says, weird one because it was a first-person shooter, but I absolutely loved Fear. That's First Encounter Assault Recon.
I was trying to remember what that acronym was for.
Wasn't the best game. Hey, let's not say things we'll regret here, James. And the whole little girl thing with long black hair was played out, but I've such a soft spot for it. The combat sequences were broken up brilliantly with pretty terrifying jump scares. Yeah. Any experience with both of those? I played the death of both of those.
Yeah, no, you take the lead on this one.
I've self-selected all of these clearly for like games that I've played.
Yeah, I played again. Fear was a game I played at a friend's house and didn't have, and then Condemned. Like I can't even picture other than the box art for it.
There was two of them as well. There was Xbox 360, first person, pretty early in the cycle, I want to say, and again, it existed in that sort of. At the time, it felt closer to Fear, but it also had elements of stuff like Amnesia and Outlast and stuff like that, where you were doing a lot of like exploration of spooky areas where you were using melee fighting. So the sort of antagonists in Condemned were like they were like kind of crazed people in a way. And I forget why. I don't think it was because it was somewhere between like horror and just crime. It was like a gritty, grimy part of a city where crime was like really bad, but also there was like a supernatural element. So you kind of thought that you were like fighting almost like raged up tweakers or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also there was like a cosmic spooky element to it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was really cool. So there was a lot of like fist fights and using like metal bars that would like degrade, and you get in these. Your character did a lot of grunting and like, so it sounded like a nasty fight. Like it sounded like brutal fist fights were happening. Like, rah, rah. It was
that's cool.
Scary.
I like that sort of weird like horror version of magical realism where it takes a real thing that's scary. Like if like some meth head ran up on you in real life, that's really terrifying.
Yeah.
So taking that to like an interesting sort of supernatural place is cool because it taps into a very grounded fear, but then it amplifies it.
Totally.
Yeah.
In a way that if you just had the grounded fear version, you'd be like, it's a video game. I'm fine.
Yeah, like a video game where you just like fight like tweakers seems really disturbing and like not a great social commentary.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Victims of the war on drugs or victims of the opioid crisis being like bad people seems like
also like mental illness, like going into
Totally,
like any game where you're in like an asylum like fighting mentally ill people is like, oh god, this has to be supernatural or it's just disturbing.
It's weird. There are many games where you play as a cop. I think it'd probably be harder these days as well, with the sort of conversation around it. But like, there was one game I played. It was so weird. It was an Amiga game based on the TV show Hill Street Blues, which wasn't actually shown, I don't think, outside of America. It certainly wasn't shown in Ireland. Which was like a procedural cop. I think it was set in New York, I want to say. I don't really know.
I'm not sure either.
And the intro to the game like had the like theme music and everything, and it was like a top-down game like Grand Theft Auto actually, but it was before GTA. Where you were managing the I guess department or whatever, for the police in this area. And you went out on calls and like arrested people, but you kind of clicked people to go places. It was more management than actually like, directly controlling people. But at nighttime, the map got dark and the crimes got more severe. So during the day, it was a lot of like silly stuff like jaywalking or, theft or maybe some assault here or there. But like at nighttime, you'd go to murders and stuff. And it was so scary. And me and my brother would play. I'd kind of over the shoulder play a lot because I was too young to really, it was quite a difficult game. And we had one of the characters who was like a real character in a TV show like die. Like they went to the scene of a murder and the suspect was still there.
Oh no.
And they got gunned down. And it was like, it was so like, because like it was one save game as well. So it felt like a roguelike or something.
Oh my god.
Yeah, you felt like, oh god, like that's it. Like they're not coming back. I can't reload that or anything. They're dead.
I love that it's like an alternate version of the TV show where like, the main character dies.
The season finale.
Yeah,
exactly. They got a job on a better network, so they
need to kill him off. Exactly.
I hadn't even thought about that, but just talking about that magical, or talking about the real life stuff not being necessarily very scary. There was something about that. It just amped it up. I think it was the fact that they were gone. That was it. Yeah. And the game was so hard that like to get to nighttime took a long time. I remember thinking like, oh, we must have played this game for like 4 or 5 hours before it got dark. It probably wasn't the case, but
just
like
real time.
Yeah, well, especially on like the Amiga where you were, you know, you weren't playing games or big long save games all that often.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nuts. And then Fear, I'm sorry, I kind of self-selected a little bit here. Fear was basically like the Ring or Ringu, that type of like magical little girl who's been experimented on thing. And it had some of the best shooting of that time in PC gaming. And I think there was console releases too later down the road.
I think so too.
But the spooky parts, I think it was Paxton Fettel was the name of the antagonist in it, all that stuff, including the final sequence in Fear is pretty terrifying as well. Like the ending of that game is pretty gnarly. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I wouldn't have thought about that.
Yeah, I just a side note, I was thinking about The Ring. Did you know that the Ring books are based all around simulation theory?
No.
So, like, Maxwell McGee, who we used to work with at GameSpot, explained this to me on a work trip one time.
Right.
Like, he'd read all of the novels, and I guess, like, I don't know if this is spoilers or not. I don't think it is, so I'll keep it light.
Skip 2 minutes if you haven't watched The Ring.
Yeah, skip, like, a minute, because I'll give you the one-sentence version. But I guess, like, Samara, the little girl, was, like an aberrant piece of programming trying to like wake people up for the simulation or something.
What?
I might be totally off base about this, but I know it has something to do with simulation theory, and that like the entire movie of The Ring, if you put it in the canon of the books, is like takes place in a simulation. This is
like the Turtles all the way down of
exactly
of whoever this author is.
Yeah, I'll do a full report on this next week.
Like to be honest, that totally rips any fear out of it.
Yeah, I know, right? But it makes it like I like that you can have that contained experience, and then it's like, okay, book 2, and you're like, all right, so everything you thought, it's a lie, right. And it's like, let's go Philip K. Dick with this.
That's amazing. I love, but then the film is like, film 2, it's the same.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
Totally. Yeah, they're like, this is too sophisticated for audiences.
When I watched that with, like I said, my buddy Dale went back home and I watched it at home. It was at late night on the Irish broadcaster. So once it was over, the channel shut down for the night.
No.
Which like doesn't happen anymore, right?
Yeah.
So like, which is the worst possible thing to happen. Like,
just go to static.
So it didn't technically go to static. But it went to a staticky like a template, like a placeholder thing with like some little bit of movement and like kind of like a clocky thing on it, which was like,
it's horrifying.
Yeah, because I was like, do I turn the television off?
Yeah, that's the
do I leave
substrate
it on?
for little girls to climb out of your TV. Like, you just need a static image.
And I feel like the reason Ringu, because I find Ringu to be very scary. My wife hadn't seen that one but watched the American one, and the American one is the scariest movie she feels like she's ever seen or something, or close to it. But Ringu to me is scary for the same reason that Silent Hill is scary, in that the technology through which it was being like manifested was part of the experience. Silent Hill with its draw distance sort of limitations, and Ringu being like during the era of VHS, and also the sort of stripped down visual quality. Like if you're watching a television broadcast on a late 90s television, so a television within a television, it's actually quite difficult to read it. Like it's distorted and staticky and noisy, and then it's also been filmed, so it's also noisy again.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a sort of that sort of like cosmic fear or something. There's like a temporal or a visual fear that's happening there that you don't get in like 4K land.
Yeah.
It's where it feels like physical in a way or something.
It's like the fear mechanic you were talking about earlier. It's like, because what they're trying to achieve with like a mechanic that distorts your, I think it was called Cthulhu, you said had a fear mechanic.
Yes.
So what that's trying to emulate is the experience of being so scared that you kind of like your faculties start to decay a little bit. And in a similar way, it sounds like this is sort of like there's something scary about, like, it's the same reason that we're all afraid of like going blind or something.
Right.
Because the idea of being cut off from your ability to interpret and perceive the world is really frightening.
Right.
And so it's like emulating that like breakdown of your sensory fidelity.
Totally. Okay, let's jump into some of the untraditional horrors. LJ Brewer says, it's not a traditional horror game, but Subnautica was really scary for me. I can sort of vibe with that. The whole like water, like, do you ever get scared of like being in the ocean and like wondering what's underneath your feet?
It's because you can't. We're like humans are like on some level we're just like little monkeys who are trying to like not get killed.
Yeah.
And so like your monkey brain is like, oh, I am not like quick or agile in this like giant puddle of water, and there are things in here that can kill you and are agile. Yeah. Water's scary, dude.
That's totally. Especially in that game where then you're venturing into darker depths and stuff like that.
Thalassophobia, I think, is the Latin word for fear of the deep, fear of deep water.
Yeah,
thalassophobia.
I like thalassic phobia. That's a different one, I think. Yeah, 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 men suffer from thalassophobia. Mephistoff asks or says, the only game that has ever actually scared me was Ecco the Dolphin on Sega Genesis. Water theme here. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh at your fear. My bad. The horrible loneliness, the constant need to find air to breathe, the incredibly urgent yet absolutely foreboding soundtrack, and the deep, endless, dark ocean combined into a dreadful time.
Okay, so I've not played Ecco the Dolphin, but I have to give a little backstory on Ecco the Dolphin here.
Okay.
So Ecco the Dolphin was loosely inspired by the scientific endeavors of a man named John C. Lilly.
Okay.
John C. Lilly was the inventor of the sensory deprivation tank as it exists today.
You're kidding me.
And not only that, but he ran these experiments where he was a self-described psychonaut, someone who explores the psyche through the use of alteration of consciousness.
Tim Schafer made him?
Yes. No, so John C. Lilly would take massive doses of LSD and try to communicate with dolphins. He got a government grant to try to facilitate the creation of communication between humans and dolphins.
Oh my god.
To basically interpolate like the dolphin language.
So we could use them to plant mines on the Russians? Is that what?
Probably something like that. Like there's always sort of like an ulterior motive once you're funding a guy to take acid and talk to dolphins. But Ecco the Dolphin, the name comes from John C. Lilly believed that there was a cosmic, like extra dimensional organization called Ecco. It's an acronym for the Earth Coincidence Control Office.
Oh my, this is like HARP.
Yes.
Wow.
So everything that happens, every single coincidence, every synchronicity, John C. Lilly believed was orchestrated by some sort of like extra dimensional or extraterrestrial organization that was like basically like orchestrating reality to achieve certain ends and to teach people or communicate to people certain like, you know, whatever, like lessons.
My God.
And so Ecco the Dolphin is, I've looked into it. The guy who made Ecco the Dolphin was aware of all of this. And so it's kind of a tip of the hat to John C. Lilly's very strange science.
Oh my, well, if you didn't have a reason to be fearful of Ecco the Dolphin, we've just given you one. Yeah, so that's interesting because Ed Annunziata is the guy who created Ecco. He actually lives in the Bay Area.
Oh my God.
And he follows me on Twitter.
Oh, Ed.
So we should get him on the podcast to talk about this, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be super rad.
I'd be so. I've read all of John C. Lilly books, and you and I went to a meetup at GDC one time, and I showed up carrying a book, and you were sitting at a table with a bunch of GDC filmmakers from the GDC Film Fest.
Oh yes.
And you were like, "Hey, what are you reading there, bud?" And everyone at the table turns towards me, and I had held up a book that was Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer by John C. Lilly, which led to some very interesting conversations.
Yeah, I didn't give you. It wasn't the easiest first.
Gave everyone a sense of who I am very immediately.
Actually, probably really did.
Yeah, it was a baptism by fire.
All right, let's draw an end to the spooky part of our spooky cast and go to a couple of regularly scheduled emails that we got here from folks. The email address for our emails is podcast@noclip.video. The first one comes in from Kyle in Montreal, and this is in relation to remember last week we had a gentleman email in who was asking about their child, 12-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
Wanted to learn how to program games and what they should do. We put the word out, and Kyle sent in a really good response, which I'll read out now. He says, first of all, for reference, I'm a software developer at a large video game studio. My first exposure to game dev was probably one of the early RPG makers. I was probably about the age of the question asker's child when I played it. And while I could do some things, ultimately it was a lot for someone at that age to take in. I think the person's job is 12, I want to say. That being said, we've come a long way since then. There's a lot of software things you can get into that are much more approachable. The first one that comes to mind is Scratch. Scratch is pretty widely used for teaching Scratch is pretty widely used for teaching programming in schools. It provides a more interactive toolbox for teaching programming. You can make games with it as well. Another option to definitely look into is see what events are going on in your community. I have previously volunteered for Canada Learning Code, teaching kids how to make their first programs in games. I'm sure there are similar events around the world. Most of the time they are sponsored by the local games and tech community and are completely free to attend. Check out things at your local libraries as well. Libraries are so much more than books these days. One more thing that inspired me to get more involved with games production is games that would include developer commentary in the game. The one that comes to mind is Portal 1, which is pretty fascinating stories and info peppered throughout the game so you can learn about how the game was made while you are playing it. Thank you so much, Carl, for sending that in. And hopefully our listener from last week will maybe get something out of that. The director commentary stuff was like a direct sort of inspiration for Noclip, just that idea of them opening up about their craft. There was a bunch, I think it was Half-Life 2's Lost Coast was the first. It was like a high dynamic range demo they put out.
I remember
it was like
that.
One-off, yeah. So that one had director commentary in it. That was the first time they did it.
Oh, cool.
And then I want to say they patched director commentary then into Half-Life 2 proper, and then did Portal 1, Left 4 Dead, I want to say,
awesome.
and maybe Portal 2. So you can play through the entire games of those with, they have little, those rotating bubbles you can go up and hit. And
that's badass.
they're really cool, yeah.
I didn't know about that.
And most of the time they just play audio. Sometimes they actually take control of the game camera and kind of show you something, and then you can go back. But it's if you want an excuse to replay any of those games, or like Ravenholm, you can go through all of Ravenholm and they'll tell you what they were doing here and there.
Kills the tension a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
You're like, zombies are rushing in and it's like, I was thinking graphical fidelity of this part was a little... You're just like, okay, yeah.
You like turn a corner and there's a massive like zombie and then it's like, hi, this is Gabe Newell from Valve.
You're like, Gabe, just checking in. Hope you're not too scared here.
Right. You shouldn't be, because this is what's happening underneath the hood.
It's merely an illusion.
And we got another one here from Andrew Reeves, who says, I just finished listening to number 12. Great episode. All your talk of Dune and aliens made me wonder if you've ever checked out Jodorowsky's Dune documentary. If not, I think you may find it pretty interesting. A great story of a legendary movie that never got made. I look forward to the next episode. Keep up the great work. I have been wanting to watch this documentary since it was announced.
Same.
And I've never actually done it.
Alejandro Jodorowsky, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's Chilean, I believe.
Right.
But he is one of my favorite filmmakers. El Topo is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's like a psychedelic Western. Holy Mountain is absolutely genius. They shot entire scenes of that movies where the main two actors were on mushrooms.
Okay.
He's a very strange filmmaker. He's sort of like an occultist.
Yeah.
But I've never seen Jodorowsky's Dune. I actually, my parents were in town recently, and my dad is really into like a lot of sort of like 60s culture and stuff. So I took him to a famous bookstore in Berkeley called Moe's.
Right.
And one of the guys who works at Moe's, I mentioned that movie, and he was like, I have a copy of the script.
Really?
Which I don't know if that's rare or not, but yeah, if you're ever in Berkeley and Andrew Reeves, stop by Moe's on Shattuck.
That's rad. It's kind of like the thing where it's been a movie that I know is special.
Yeah.
So I need to be in the right headspace for it.
Same. I'm saving it for like I think if anyone would appreciate that approach to a movie, it'd be Alejandro Jodorowsky, because he's very like into like ritual and magic and stuff.
This is the same reason I still have that copy of Gaspar Noé's Irreversible, which I have still not watched.
Waiting for a real rainy day.
I know. We bought that while we were filming the Half-Life doc.
Yeah,
I think.
in that weird little movie store
by Santa Monica.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that was a good time. Add it to the pile. I guess. That's a podcast for this week. A lot of video game spooky talk, a little bit of film talk peppered in there. That's kind of what we're about here. But it's all going to change a little bit in the next couple of weeks. The next podcast you will be able to listen to if you're a patron is going to be the first of our patron only podcasts, where we're going to be sitting down to talk about Death Stranding, which should be interesting.
Yeah.
We were supposed to have a film date tomorrow, but it's been cancelled because of all the fire stuff that's going on at the moment. So the embargo is up on Friday, and I have to have the game completed before I can record any review stuff. That's a thing on the embargo sheet that you had to like agree to. So I feel like I have a lot of that game left. So tomorrow I'm just going to lock myself in a room and like play for like 12 hours.
Nice.
So maybe we'll come back on Thursday or Friday and record it. And then,
Nice.
and
I
then,
cannot wait to hear about this. I have a lot of questions.
good, because
I'm sure you have some very nebulous answers.
So that's the thing, is I think the way we'll tackle it is I want to kind of skirt around. I don't want to spoil it for people.
Yeah.
There are certain
myself among them.
Yeah, I feel like you can talk around this game and get maybe what it is to people. I mean, you can do that with most things, and I'm quite spoiler sensitive, so that will be the first podcast for patrons. We're actually going to aim to get it up this Friday, the day the embargo is up. So if you're a patron, you'll get it on your patron feed. If you're not a patron, feel free to go to patreon.com/noclip. All the money, all the funds you give us will go towards I'm just scared of saying the word money for some reason. All the money you give us, we're going to use to shower ourselves.
We'll roll around in it as we make documentaries.
Right. All the money you give us will be put towards an incredibly long Ethernet cable, which I'll run from my house to Emeryville. So.
All the way from Santa Rosa Sonic headquarters.
Yeah, so we can have internet in the new studio. No, it all goes towards the podcast, but also all the documentaries we make as well. So thank you so much to our fantastic community of people who support our work. And for those of you who aren't patrons, there'll be a little teaser in the feed for that one that'll just give you a little flavor of it. And we'll be back very excitingly, I'm happy to say we'll be back the following week with our first, I guess, real Noclip podcast episode, or the first of our sort of ongoing sort of production, which will be interviews with developers. So we'll still have these one-on-one ones where it's just the two of us as well. We'll figure out whether it'll be every other week or every fourth week or whatever, but kind of when we don't have other folks in the area coming in. But our first interview is going to be with Jim Crawford of Frog Fractions fame. We're also, let's see, I'll have to talk to you after this. I sorted out some sort of situation for camera thing.
Okay.
We probably won't record the first one that way. Maybe we'll set up a wide just so we get used to the process.
Do a test at least.
Yeah. For YouTube, just to even have a wide will be maybe somewhat good. I don't know. Maybe you might send the wrong message because people will think that's just how it's going to look. So I don't know. We'll chat about it. But for everyone else, we'll have that one up in the next week or so. So yeah.
Awesome.
From the new studio.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween, everyone. Happy Dia de las Muertes. Happy Samhain to all our Irish or pagan family friends out there. Have yourself a spooky time, and we'll see you next time.
Wahahahaha.